All right, we will call to order the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for June 9th, 2021. Will you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item A2, roll call, please.
Chair Twait,
Here.
Commissioner Springer,
Here.
Commissioner Halstead,
Here.
Commissioner Dothett,
Here.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Here.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Here.
Commissioner Woodard.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Item A3, agenda approval. Commissioner Halstead.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any objections? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Item A4, consent agenda. Commissioner Halstead.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Guys are tag teaming down there, very nice. Any objections? All right, seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Moves us down to item C, scheduled public comment. We have none. Item D, unscheduled public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to item E, consideration of plats. We have two tonight. E1 is Resolution PZ 2021-22, preliminary subdivision plat of Kenai Landing Subdivision 2021 edition, submitted by Edge Survey and Design. P.O. Box 208, Kasilof, on behalf of Kenai Landing, Inc., 4786 Homer Spit Road, Homer. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Dothett.
I get a motion for approval on Resolution PZ 2021-22, preliminary plat subdivision, Kenai Landing subdivision 2021.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Halstead.
Second.
All right, staff report.
Good evening, Chair Twait and fellow planning commissioners. My name is Ryan Foster. I'll be giving the staff presentation this evening, and that's on PZ 2021-22, preliminary plat for Kenai Landing Subdivision 2021 edition. Edge Survey and Design has submitted a preliminary plat on behalf of the property owners, Kenai Landing, Inc. and PRL Logistics, Inc. And as we can see here, we've got the aerial showing the subject properties. To the commissioners, this might look familiar. There was a conditional use permit for a plan unit residential development approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission earlier this year at 2101 Bowpicker Lane, the northern subject property here. Next slide, please. The plat affects the parcels described here. I'm not going to read all three legal, but we also have the preliminary plat here as well on this slide. Next slide, please. Staff's analysis. Access to the preliminary plat is provided via Cannery Road, which is a paved Kenai Peninsula Borough maintained road. City and water and sewer lines are not available in this area. The properties are currently serviced by private wells and on-site septic systems, and an installation agreement will not be required. The preliminary plat requests exceptions to the requirements of KMC subdivision design standards and KMC 141080 minimum improvements required under Chapter 1410 subdivision regulations and the Kenai Peninsula Borough subdivision code. And these are in attachment C. They're also in this slide deck here as well. These requested exceptions regard requirements for wastewater access and design standards. And we'll talk about those just a little bit more later in the presentation. Next slide, please. Any infrastructure improvements, so that's roadways, sewer, water, etc., are considered private by the City of Kenai. Regarding any roadways or other infrastructure improvements that do not meet minimum standards required by the City of Kenai, if at any future time the city takes ownership and or maintenance responsibilities of roadways within the subdivision or other infrastructure improvements, will have to be improved to meet City of Kenai standards in effect at time of acceptance. The cost of any infrastructure improvements to meet City of Kenai standards will be borne by property owners in the subdivision by assessment without further approval required. And we'll see later that this is one of the recommended conditions for the resolution for this plat. The applicant will also provide the City of Kenai a copy of DEC compliance certification on the water and sewer system. Since the Kenai Peninsula Borough has plating authority in the city of Kenai, staff recommends that the discussion and determination of the requested exceptions be executed through the KPP plating process. Staff members with the city of Kenai would be available for any future discussions on the topic of exceptions. And so when we're talking about these exceptions, there are a number of them. Really, staff stance is that at this juncture, there's likely to be discussion and/or negotiation regarding those exceptions, with discussions with the borough. We thought it was best if, because the borough has that plating authority, that those negotiations regarding exceptions are discussed and basically agreed to at that time. Next slide, please. Recommendations. City staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat of Kenai Landing Subdivision 2021 addition, subject to the following conditions. I am going to go through and actually read all the conditions recommended for this plat. Further development of the property shall conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. 2, add a plat note as following. Any infrastructure improvements, roadways, sewer, water, etc. are considered private by the city of Kenai. Regarding any roadways or other infrastructure improvements that do not meet minimum standards required by the city of Kenai, if at any future time the city takes ownership and/or maintenance responsibilities of roadways within the subdivision or other infrastructure improvements, will have to be improved to meet city of Kenai standards and effect at time of acceptance. The cost of any infrastructure improvements to meet City of Kenai standards will be borne by property owners in the subdivision by assessment without further approval required. And so that's a recommended, again, to the borough to add this note to the plat to just make it clear that as far as staff sees it, this is a private project. But if at some time down the road in the future, it could be decades, that if the city was to take acceptance, it would be required to make these improvements meet the current, at the time of acceptance, the current requirements of code. Number 3, property owner will provide the city of Kenai a copy of DEC compliance certification on the water and sewer system. Next slide, please. Number 4, the city of Kenai requests to receive approval from the Kenai Peninsula Borough on exception to requirements of subdivision code. Number 5, plat note 22 should update the KPP plat committee meeting date as necessary. I think the one in there was perhaps targeting a specific date, but I think that's actually likely to change. Number 6, survey or property owner must work with the city of Kenai and the Kenai Peninsula Borough when designated street names to ensure names meet city and borough regulations. Number 7, property owner will receive approval from the Kenai Peninsula Borough on exceptions to requirements in the Kenai Peninsula Borough subdivision regulations. Number 8, staff members of the city of Kenai would be available for any future discussions on the topic of exceptions. I did want to note there is a typo, essentially. If you could go to slide 13, it'll say requested code exceptions.
Am I going forward or back?
Oh, forward. There we go. And this is also in the staff report packet. On the list of exceptions here, you can see number 6 on page 2. It's referencing KPP was party of the statement easement agreement, and the public process created the easement, and it says the 60-foot width requirement was agreed to. 60 feet is actually the code requirement. It's actually referencing a 50-foot width there. So I just wanted to note that typo there. That concludes my presentation, and happy to stand for any questions.
All right, and I guess we do not want to open this up for any kind of public testimony, correct?
It is not a public hearing.
Okay.
So I think that's correct. I would say, though, regarding questions, I do know the applicant is here.
Okay, well, I
so-
think that's, if, as long as we have that option, because I'm sure there will be some questions. So if we can do that, that would be great. So, all right, we have a motion on the floor, and the presentation. So how about discussion? Anyone have any questions? Commissioner Halsted?
Just for clarification, this is that same project that we did the conditional use permit for, or that was presented a couple of meetings prior? So this is just kind of a continuation of that?
Chair Twait, Commissioner Halsted, that is correct. On the slide deck, you can see on slide 2 with the aerial map, it's the most northern parcel there. That was the conditional use plan, the conditional use permit rather, for a planned unit residential development, and that for the first phase was 60 residential units. And so there is a relationship between that permit that was within just the last couple of months approved by the commission, and I believe this plat that's coming forward.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Dothett?
On page 22, I can't read it, and I couldn't read it on my iPad either without zooming in, I guess, but there was a red marking something, encircling,
Item 22.
I was trying to figure out what that was.
Oh, yeah, yes, Chair Twait, Commissioner Douthat, let me reference that is plat note 22, and I did have that as a condition to update that meeting date as necessary. Essentially what it says is, here granted by the KPB Plat Committee at the June 28, 2021 meeting. Really just a kind of a minor comment that perhaps that is the meeting date that this does move forward, but it was really just to say that if it goes on another meeting date, that plat note should be updated, really. And again, just to sort of note the process where, upon a recommendation on plats, city staff, we send these to the borough within a day or so, and then they start on their platting process. So these conditions are really, generated thinking of how the borough can utilize the recommendations from the City of Kenai Planning and Zoning Commission with plats of which they have authority over. So, kind of a little bit of a unique Alaska kind of relationship with platting authority and these municipalities and boroughs. So.
Anything else? I have a question, and maybe for the applicant or staff as well. I'm curious about the exceptions as far as if the city takes them over at some point with the roads. In addressing just the roads specifically, what are we talking about as far as what isn't meeting the city standards? Are we talking about width? Are we talking about subgrade? What slopes? I'm just curious. And then the follow-up to that, I guess, is the emergency services people have looked, and so if they're narrow or we don't have any, I haven't even went back to look to see if we've had any like cul-de-sacs or dead ends, or there's access for emergency services. That's been addressed, I'm assuming. That's probably a staff question for sure.
Yeah, Chair Twait, regarding that, so certainly a reviewer of the conditional use permit, which did have the proposed street layout for the planned unit residential development was reviewed, and I don't believe we actually received any comments regarding there being any issues there. So for that, yes, there was review from city staff on that. I would say that when it comes to the street standards and the any propose exceptions, that certainly that would be a part of any discussion or negotiations with the borough and their plating and their standards, which don't always align with the city. So that is particularly why my recommendation to include that plat note to say that if at some point in time that if the city was to accept them and maintain them and own them, that there would be a requirement for them to be brought up to code at the cost of the property owner. So it's that is really specifically why that was included.
So then what is it to code, I guess, come on, please come
so
forward, yeah,
it-
absolutely.
oh.
Just, like I said, I'm just kind of curious as much as anything, but,
Jason Young, surveyor for this project. The exceptions to code tracks A and B, I can't remember which ones they are. The two along the river will only have access through section line easement, whereas the borough would require dedicated right-of-way. That's the exception. I think this correlates back to the planned unit development in that it will be providing its own Kenai standard roads within, over the top of the subdivision. Kind of two different processes.
absolutely.
We're not gonna grant the roads we need, that's why we're asking the exceptions, but the planned unit development will provide them
Okay.
emergency services. Those will be a private road, they won't be a dedicated through the borough road. So that's where the exception is needed now, but it's actually gonna be met through the planned unit development.
Okay, great, that completely answers it. All right. Anyone else have any further discussion or questions of staff? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Chair Twait,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. We move on to item E2, Resolution PZ 2021-23, a preliminary subdivision plat of Triple C subdivision submitted by Ability Surveys 152 DeHeel Avenue, Homer, on behalf of Mark Holmes, 4493 Lakewood Boulevard, Naples, Florida. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Springer.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution PZ 2021-23.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Staff report.
Oh, thank you, Chair Twait. This presentation is on PZ 2021-23 preliminary plat for the Triple C subdivision. Ability Surveys submitted preliminary plat on behalf of the property owner, Mark Holmes. We can see here the aerial graphic of the subject property. Next slide, please. Plat affects the parcel described as northwest 1/4 of the southwest 1/4 of the northwest 1/4 in section 34 T6N R11W Seward Meridian. Property owner proposes to subdivide an approximately 10-acre parcel into two lots of approximately 4.3 acres for lot 1 and 4.3 acres for lot 2, and we can see the preliminary plat here on the slide as well. Next slide, please. Staff's analysis. The subject parcel is currently undeveloped and meets minimum lot size standards. Access to the proposed lot is via McCollum Drive and Fox Avenue, an undeveloped street. Pursuant to KMC 141080, the city will require an installation agreement for development of Fox Avenue from McCollum Drive to Chiniac Street. City water lines are existing within the right-of-way of Fox Avenue and can be extended to the subdivision. Pursuant to KMC 171010A, property owner must connect to the public water system provided that any part of the structure is or is to be within 200 feet of an existing public water main adjacent to the property line in a right-of-way. Next slide, please. Staff analysis continued. City sewer lines are located within the right-of-way McCollum Drive also, with a manhole located at the southwest corner of the subject parcel. Additionally, sewer lines are located at the southeast corner of the subject parcel, located within the right-of-way of Fox Avenue. Pursuant to KMC 172010A, property owner must connect to the public sewage system, provided that any part of the structure is or is to be within 200 feet of an existing public sewer main adjacent to the property line in a right-of-way. The preliminary plat meets requirements of KMC subdivision design standards and KMC 141080, minimum improvements required under Chapter 1410 subdivision regulations. Next slide, please. Recommendation, city staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat of Triple C subdivision subject to the following conditions. Actually, I'll just go ahead and read through them just because these are not always typical conditions. One, further development of the property should conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. Two, pursuant to KMC 171010A, property owner must connect to the public water system, provided that any part of the structure is or is to be within the 200 feet of an existing public water main adjacent to the property line in a right-of-way. Condition 3, pursuant to KMC 172010A, property owner must connect to the public sewage system, provided that that part of the structure is or is to be within 200 feet of an existing public sewer main adjacent to the property line in a right-of-way. In condition 4, pursuant to KMC 141080, the city will require an installation agreement for development of Fox Avenue from McCollum Drive to Chiniak Street. The installation agreement will be developed after the preliminary plat is approved, and improvements will be constructed in accordance with the installation agreement. That concludes my presentation, and happy to stand for questions.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? Going once. Commissioner Greenberg.
What does the installation agreement entail? That means they have to develop the road to the city standards.
Chair Tway, Commissioner Greenberg, that is correct. And so, upon the finalization of this plat with the borough, there would be an installation agreement with the city through the Public Works Department that essentially would spell out, the requirements of building that road connection via code.
Does that also affect the lots on the other side, like of the street? Do they also have to participate in building that road?
Chair Tway, Commissioner Greenberg, I believe that, per code, because this development would be taking place, via this preliminary plat and subdivision from one lot into two, that our code requirement is that at this time, this property owner would be required to make this connection.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, we will move on to item F, public hearings. We have none, nor do we have any unfinished business on G. Takes us to item H, new business. 2 items there tonight. H1 is a special use permit to the State of Alaska Division of Forestry for air tanker reload base. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. This is a special use permit to the State of Alaska Division of Forestry for an air tanker reload base. This is the current lease the Division of Forestry has is expiring on June 30th of this year. This is also related that you can see, and actually I'm on page 63 on the memo for this, but you can actually see on page 65 the preliminary plat that the commission saw recently and approved, recommended for approval recently, where this is where the operation center for the city, the lot line is being adjusted into the currently leased property for the Division of Forestry. And a sand storage facility is planned to be constructed there. And so with the change in the size of this parcel, one, as well as the current lease is expiring, and then this plat that was approved by, recommended for approval by the commission recently has not been finalized with the borough yet. I think it should probably be this summer. Really, the only option to allow the Division of Forestry to keep operating there, for especially this summer and this fire season, was a special use permit, because we are able to do a special use permit with utilizing a preliminary plat, whereas we cannot enter into leases utilizing preliminary plats at this time. And so that's, and then of course we wanted to bring this forward for the commission to review and provide a recommendation to City Council. I believe this is slated for the next council on June 16th for review. That really concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions about this special use permit for the Division of Forestry.
All right, thank you. And I believe we still need a motion for this, don't we? So can we get a motion? Commissioner Halsted.
I move we approve special use permit for State of Alaska Division of Forestry Air Tanker Reload Base.
All right, second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Seems pretty straightforward, I believe. All right. Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Chair Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Item H2, action approval for a special use permit for Weaver Brothers, Inc. for truck trailer storage. Let's get a motion, please. Commissioner Halsted.
I move we approve special use permit to Weaver Brothers for truck trailer storage.
All right. Second.
I'll second.
Commissioner Dothett seconds. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. This is there is an existing special use permit for Weaver Brothers for truck trailer storage. It's actually 3 of the parcels that are a part of this request, and you can actually see those on page 77 of the staff report. Now, those parcels have been part of a special use permit for this truck trailer storage for the last few years. This year's a little different. The request is to include these 3 parcels, but also to add 2 additional portions of city-owned land, and you can actually see those on page 78. And on page 78, you can see that track A, the Weaver Brothers has a lease for truck storage there. Currently has had it for several years. This highlighted area is essentially areas that sort of spill over, if you will, where there is currently truck trailer storage occurring. So this request is to really kind of clean it up, if you will, and the request to have a special use permit for these additional parcels, which as noted, has actually been utilized for truck trailer storage. That's been essentially spillover from a lease site. So again, these are for a special use permit, and then separately they have a lease for this other property. I think that's all the fine points on it. That concludes my presentation. Happy to stand for any questions about the special use permit to Weaver Brothers Inc. for truck trailer storage.
All right, thank you. We have a motion. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Fikes?
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Chair Twait?
Yes.
Commissioner Springer?
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted?
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. Item I, pending items we have none, takes us to reports. J1, City Council, Councilman Glendenning.
Thank you, Chairman Twait. On June the 2nd, City Council met in chambers, 6 p.m. We had a fairly light agenda. Robert Ruffner gave a Cook Inlet Fisheries update, and mostly it concerned the testimony about the Stevens-Magnuson Act regarding regulation of fishing out in the Middle Rip, where traditionally we have, where the fleet is fished, and perhaps that might not be available to them. There's still procedures and considerations going on in Washington, so we will not know for a while. But the council is going to prepare a resolution supporting exploitation of that fishery as we traditionally have for 100 years. So that's the upshot of that. We enacted unanimously an ordinance increasing revenues and appropriations in the Airport Special Revenue and Snow Removal Equipment Projects Fund for the replacement of the area-wide tractor and mower. This definitely was needed. The one we had was all wore out. It's a dual purpose. It can mow and it can tractor, and the FAA is going to help us with that. And so bless you. We enacted an ordinance increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the Water Sewer Fund and Water Sewer Capital Projects Fund to provide supplemental funding for the Wellhouse No. 1 relocation project. At the year 2018, there was a pretty stout earthquake here, and basically it jacked the wellhead up out of the ground, and it was a well that we would not use. It produces more arsenic in the water than is allowed. And so what this allows for is that the well is going to be plugged and abandoned. The well house itself is going to be salvaged and moved over to the current well sites and filtering area and be used for storage. And that's something that they can use. So that was enacted unanimously. We enacted unanimously an ordinance increasing revenues and appropriations in the airport revenue and terminal improvement capital project to provide local share to the terminal rehab project, and basically what we're going to do, this is quite a mouthful, I'll maybe shortcut it a little bit. We have a conference room, and we're going to provide that with internet for public meetings, and it'll have enough bandwidth that it can support not only a meeting with how can we say, heavy PowerPoints, but also the normal use that people would use out in the terminal and such. And so as such, it was something that we knew about. We just didn't have our costs right. I think it's about $19,000 that we had to come up with, and that was well within our budget. We awarded a professional service contract for design service for the Kenai Bluff Stabilization Project. What this is just to complete the conceptual engineering that the Corps of Engineers did for us. And what it will be rock revetment going from the mouth of the river about a mile upstream. And in a nutshell, the boulders are a size, on the base, 2 of them could fit in a side dump. That's how big they are. And the proposed quarry is on Kodiak, so they'll barge them over. And we had talked about how we're going to do it. Probably just have a crane and just broadcast them. Or if you have a barge with a belly dump, just a matter of technique. But anyway, this design will be, of course, the profile of the rock placement, the amount of material, and associated considerations for a major engineering program like this. It should take about a year for it to develop, and then we'll come forward with a proposal to award the job to a contractor. The professional services agreement also calls for the design service engineer firm to stay with us throughout the construction. So they'll be advisors to us during the construction to make sure that the design intent is followed. A resolution authorizing the purchase of a new grader for the streets department. We're going to retire 2 graders and pick up this one. And it has a little more capability than the other 2 tired graders, and we should not see any loss in service unless we have horrid snowfalls like we did this spring. And my phone blew up on that, but we were able to take care of it and make everybody reasonably satisfied. But this grader, of course, is going to be paid for by monies that we've set aside in our equipment replacement fund. So it is provided for and budgeted. We adopted a resolution approving an amendment to a lease of airport lands between SOAR International Ministries Incorporated for Track 2 of the General Apron subdivision. Basically, it's just allowing them to fulfill their thoughts in their lease agreement with us at the airport, to give them more area to work their process, their program. We authorize contracts for employee health care and other benefits effective July 1. We went through a whole, not we, but administration went through a whole a grading process for the health benefits that we have, and we selected, there are 3 programs, and we selected 3 different insurance providers, and we're trying to hold our costs down. Costs, I think, are going to be challenging in the future for medical care, but we are within our expectations of what we thought we would have to spend for this year. And then we authorized a renewal of the city's insurance coverage with the Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association through June 30th of 2022. And we have a Board of Adjustment, 2 hearings, and preliminarily they're set up for 7/20 and 7/23. This has to do with some actions that were taken here on the Planning Commission, and they were appealed, and I probably can't reveal too much more than that, but anyway, it'll be about, it's almost 6 weeks from now when this will be handled. And we had an executive session to negotiate a settlement agreement with Ron and Shirley Smith regarding utility fees for a property on the Spur Highway. And that ends my report. I brought my packet if you have any questions.
All right, anyone have any questions? I've got two for you.
Oh,
Who was that awarded to for the bluff
yeah,
stabilization?
hold on a second here. Oh, hold on. Okay, page 15. Okay, it's HDR Engineering. They received the highest scoring proposal and having proven extensive experience with the Army Corps. And we actually had a notice of intent on March 18th to award the HDR Engineering, award the contract to them, and the details were finally fleshed out for refining the scope of services. And it's in the amount of probably $791,000. There's a contingency for about $75,000, which is just that's roughly 10%, which is traditional for a contract like this.
And that's just for this initial design, that doesn't include the consulting while the construction's going on? That's separate?
I think it's all involved. I think it's all
Okay.
rolled into that. It's a comprehensive contract.
Gotcha.
But I just wanted to emphasize that they're not gonna, dump a design out there and then walk away.
Right.
They're gonna make sure that the design intent is followed through. And what I was told is the Corps of Engineers is pleased that we picked them. They've worked with them before, so there's an established working relationship.
Good. The other one is, what do they do with the old graders? Do they try to auction them off? Do they
Yes.
sell them? They do auction them off?
Yeah, they do auction them off.
Okay.
And, yeah, we don't get all the new off them, but they're mostly, for our purposes anyway, are used up. And so if we have the equipment replacement fund, and if we can, when something is told it's time with us and we can find a piece of equipment within our budget that is an upgrade, we most certainly will do that.
Does that money go back into the general fund then, or does you
It's a
recoup
subset.
that, or does it go
Yeah,
back
it's
into the?
It's just an accounting item within the general fund.
Okay.
In other words, this money is set aside for this purpose.
No, I'm talking about the money when you
Oh, when we
auction
sell-
these.
yeah,
Does that go
yeah,
back
yeah,
into the
yeah,
equipment
it
fund
does.
again?
Yeah, it comes back in.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
otherwise, I'd spend it on candy, but I don't have that decision power, so I'll just report.
I appreciate that. All right. Anyone else? Yep. Commissioner Greenberg.
So does that essentially conclude the bluff erosion project?
Actually, it's just the beginning.
It's, okay, but it will be, the bluff will be stabilized.
Yes, there's just a hoop that we have to jump through with the Corps of Engineers. They still have to put up their share of the funds with us. Okay, so we committed ourselves to put up these monies to get the project started. Okay, but going forward, there's going to be more money required, and that is going to, I think that will happen. It just hasn't happened yet.
But if it doesn't happen, so some rocks will be put there.
Nothing will happen until they come up with their money. We're just
Okay.
As far as the physical, the construction, the physical placement of rocks.
Okay.
Yeah, and that, like I say, this design proposal will take a year to develop. Then after that, we'll have contractors, and then we got to quarry the rocks and bring them over. So there's quite a bit of time ahead of us yet.
Gotcha, but it's looking very positive. Like
Yes,
this.
it is.
Okay,
Very
good.
positive, very positive.
Great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner Dothett.
It's just something on my mind I'm trying to comprehend since I tend to use the roads a lot. Are they only replacing one grader replacing two graders with one due to manpower and losing a position that they're not filling?
That's part of it, but this other grader has,
Greater.
what'd I say?
It's greater than the other two, right?
I know, I have hockey teeth, and sometimes I substitute words, but you're overrunning your headlights with me. Yeah, this grader is greater than the other one. Okay, did I do that? Yeah, what it is, it has greater capacity. Blade is wider, the mold board is set, that has, the little gate that comes down and allows the prison's driveway to be cleared. And so that's, yeah, it's a delicate dance, but one person retired from the streets department, and the decision was made not to replace him. If we find that we need him, or that replacement, that slot is still open.
So did they lose the funding for that position, or they're just deciding at this time not to fill the position?
Decided not to fill the position. The funding potentially is there. It's budgeted. It's just not going to be expended.
All right, I was just curious about that. I just
Yeah.
wrapped my head around.
Yeah, and we have, not everything is done with a grader either. We have, if you notice, we have some of these real nice dump trucks, with belly blades and all that, and they help us clean the roads. There's not going to be a nose plow on this grader, just because we have other equipment that can fulfill those functions. It's inside baseball, but that's what I know.
Okay, not a problem. I just don't necessarily agree with everything.
Well,
But I was just curious.
yeah. Yeah, if we're wrong, it's an easy fix.
That's true. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much. Item J2, Borough Planning, Vice Chair Fikes.
Alrighty, thank you, Chairman Tweet. The borough met on May 24th, and we had several plats before us we reviewed and discussed, and the majority of the time was taken up for a postponement of a conditional land use permit that had come back around. That was a modification from the original, and what the applicant was asking for was the permission to drill below the water table. And so we had asked for a postponement to get some more data and some more information from some of the residents in the area that were going to be impacted. It was going to be over on the Funny River area at the end of the Soldotna Airport. And so we had some more testimony come forward from some other applicants in the area that would be impacted. And we had some testimony from the surveyors as far as some hydrology input. And it was decided that no, we weren't going to sign off on it. So they are to stay where they're at with their conditional land use, and they're not to go into the water table at this time. And that was our postponement after having been delayed due to a vote on a director's decision. There was a decision that the director had made in transition from our old planning director where the borough, Max Best, was exiting, and in the process the new director was coming in, and there was a case before them that landed on the Planning and Zoning's Commission's desk. We had denied it, and the director had stepped in and said, no, I'm going to approve it. And so then there was some litigation, and in that litigation it was brought up that, you can override the director's decision. And so they wanted to know how you could do that. And so then there was a whole lot of hoopla on how to go about that. And so that took up 2 more meetings of how. We got the how nailed down, then we had a vote, and then out of 13 that was reduced down to 11 commissioners, only 8 were present, and so then they had a split vote. And so I bring all this up because 2.5 meetings later, the end result was it stays the way it was. And this person over here's money was spent on attorneys, and this person's money on attorneys, and yeah, I just kind of shake my head because it was a lodge in Homer that had a permit for a conditional use to operate events, and I think he wanted to expand, and he wanted to do some greater things, and some folks in the neighborhood didn't want him to expand his conditional use permit. And so there was a lot of discussion about, well, did he already have events? Did he not have events? Were they just B&Bs? And it was like splitting hairs. And so, yeah, we got through all that testimony, and yeah, the gavel was smashed and said, nope, stays the same. So then we moved on to the gravel pit, and that was, interesting because we had reviewed it before. we had agreed upon allowing them to dig, but just as long as they didn't go within the water table. So having such a short time from when we looked at it at first to have them come back, and now they wanted to go into the water table was kind of concerning to a lot of us on the commission. So it was kind of refreshing to have some additional testimony and some feedback from some of the folks in the audience and stuff testify. So we ultimately, like I say, decided not to approve that one. So there's a strong chance that there could be litigation on that one as well. So that was all we had, and we adjourned for the evening. And our next one is scheduled for June 14th.
All right, anyone have any questions? All right, we'll move along to J3 Administration. Mr. Foster.
Thank you, Chair Twait. For our next meeting on June 23rd, we have one conditional use permit. We also have two new business items. These are requests for donations of city land. One is with KPHI, who's done actually recently completed some low-income and senior housing construction that we're also a part of the land donation process, and so they're requesting additional donation for low-income and senior housing. So the other one being Triumvirate North Theater. Is requesting a land donation. Folks may know that over this winter their theater burned down, and so they're actually looking to build a new theater. And so both of those will come forward on new business, and just look to have a recommendation to City Council for the commission on those two requested land donations. And last, we'll have some commissioners training. So again, I think we'll probably start with a PowerPoint, and then I think what I'd hope to do is that we can also open it up into more of like a discussion, and sort of Q&A, and I'll really just have conversations about planning and zoning and roles and responsibilities and rules and all that fun stuff that we deal with on a regular basis. And that's everything I have.
All right, anyone have any questions?
Did you have a date on those meetings, the training?
Oh, Chair Twait, Commissioner Woodard, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oops, did you have a date for the commissioner meetings or trainings?
Oh, yeah, that will also be on the next meeting, June 23rd. Yep.
Before the meeting or after the meeting?
I was, let me see, I don't know, does anybody happen to know where we normally would put a training session on the agenda?
Maybe we would do it as a work session.
As a work session?
And then we get food usually.
Okay. So we could do it that way. And so essentially we'd go through the public hearing for conditional use permit, new business for the two requested land donations, and then I guess we could do a work session for commissioners training if that works for everybody.
Absolutely.
Great.
The land donation that the housing initiatives after, are they looking in that same vicinity where they've been building?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The same tract, require a new subdivision, and yeah,
Okay.
that is a part of the request.
Okay, good. Anyone else? All right, we'll move on. Additional public comments. Unless Commissioner Glendenning would like to speak. Go ahead, sir.
Just one thing, I want to compliment you on your engagement and good questions, and I think we're in a good place with this commission, and everybody seems to follow what goes on, and ask good questions, and we're all still learning about Ryan, our new planning director and a new dynamic on this council or this commission. And I'm actually quite pleased with what I see, and I learn something every meeting I come here. So just thank you for your interest and attention.
Thank you. No informational items. Our next meeting is June 23rd. Commissioners' comments and questions. Commissioner Halsted.
Nothing here.
Commissioner Greenberg.
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Woodard.
I'm good.
Commissioner Dothett.
I'm good. I'll be gone the next meeting. I might try to zoom in to see maybe if I can catch the training. Kind of depends on where in the road system we're at.
River system or road system?
Roads, I wish
Okay,
river.
all right.
No, we down south driving
Okay.
around.
Commissioner Springer.
I don't have anything.
All right, Vice Chair Fikes.
All good.
All right, I will add nothing either. So with all the business complete, the meeting is adjourned.